I just read this book and I forgot all the characters' names. Hello everybody, welcome back to the next episode of Vlogmas. So unfortunately, if you saw last week's episode, you knew I didn't quite make it through my readathon. I made it about halfway, 12 hours, but not the full 24. It was much more of a reading sprint, which was still fun for me, but when I filmed that originally, it was when I just started having that double reaction I talked about. So I was really struggling with just everything. So I'm really glad that I stopped. I really needed much more recovery time, but I am feeling much better. And today I am going to talk about the last 6 months of reading. And I went through and I wrote down everything. I had been using Goodreads to track my reading this back half of the year, which I definitely really loved. But I recently found Fable, and I love that app so much more. I'm definitely going to make a switch. So I'll leave my Fable account in the description if you want to follow me to see what I'm reading and my reviews on them a little earlier than these videos. But I did write down the books that I read these last 6 months, and we can get into them. Also, I just want to say before we get into it that there are going to be spoilers, so if you see a book on here that you want to read, maybe skip that part of the video, or if you don't want any spoilers, just a heads up. Starting off, we have Husband Material by Alexis Hall. So this is the second book in the series. The first one is Boyfriend Material. So this follows the same characters from there, and they are now entering the stage of their life where they would want to get married. In reality, it's everybody around them is getting married. Like Alex's best friend is getting married at the very beginning. Then one of, is it Oliver or, I said Alex, that's the wrong character. The complete wrong book too. Luke's best friend is getting married. And then like another part of the book is one of Luke's coworkers gets married, and then Luke proposes like in the most random way possible. So I actually found this book very funny. I did not expect them not to get married in the end with the name of the book and everything. I know that they were both very frazzled. I think about halfway through, I was like, I don't think they're actually gonna go through with the wedding, like their wedding. And I was right. But I actually kind of like that. I have another book on the list we'll get to later that has a similar ending of you start the book thinking two characters are going to be together, but they don't end up together, and you're actually okay with it. So that was what I forgot to write down what I reviewed these at. I really like this book. I think I gave it a 4-star rating. Yeah, I think this was a really good second addition to their story, because also with stories like this, you can definitely argue that a second book maybe isn't the most necessary, and I don't know, maybe you can still argue it with this, but I actually think it was a good addition to the story. So next, another physical book is I Kissed Sarah Wheeler. This is another Casey McQuiston book. I love Red, White, and Royal Blue, despite the fact that I can't say it. So I was really excited to pick up another one of her books to see what it was about. And I really enjoyed this book. I loved the mystery element of it, like trying to figure out what's gonna happen before it happens. My favorite kind of book. But unfortunately, a lot of those books are like scary thriller type books, and I'm not very good with those books. Those kinds of stories in general, honestly. So to have a story like that that wasn't in that category was really nice. Also, I find with, this is definitely a enemies to lovers situation. With books like that, I sometimes find it really hard to believe that they actually like each other, and it's not just for the sake of the book. But this one, I could actually tell that they liked each other. And Chloe, the main character here that we follow throughout the book, she was already out as bi, versus Sarah, the blonde girl here on the cover, she still was trying to figure out a lot for herself, and I think it actually helped in this situation with the enemies to lovers thing, where it was much more about Sarah figuring out what she likes and coming to the conclusion that she does like girls. So yeah, I really like this book. I think I also give this one a 4-star. So next is the first audiobook on the list. I read so many audiobooks in this last 6 months. It really helped with my reading goal this year, because around the middle of the year, I definitely had a pretty big reading slump, especially with the ending of college, trying to figure that out. I was a bit stressed through that, so I definitely fell off my reading, but audiobooks really helped me pick that back up. So I read Theoretically Straight. I also completely forgot to write down any author's names, so I apologize for not having those. But this was a really cute book. It was a high school romance. It was about two boys who met. One who knew he was gay, one who didn't, and them figuring that out together while also exploring their maybe haunted church together. There was also some religious backing behind it. It was really cute. It was a nice quick little read for me, but it wasn't something that stuck with me super, like, it didn't stick with me a lot, so I think I gave that one a 3-star. Back to the physical books, we have 10 Things That Never Happened by Alexis Hall again. So I really liked the first 2 books I read by Alexis, so I wanted to continue with some of her books. And this was one of them. I did read, I don't have it on the list because I ended up DNFing it. Another one of Alexis' books. I don't even have the physical book anymore. I donated it because I just didn't like it. I didn't like the way that it was written, which was just a personal thing. But I actually quite liked this book. It was a fake amnesia. It's the first time I've read something like that, which I'm not totally sure how much I liked the faking amnesia part of the story, but I definitely thought it was very cute. It follows Sam and Jonathan. Sam is the blonde one and Jonathan is the dark-haired one here. This book does fall into that space for me where it's like it's an enemies to lovers kind of vibe, but I don't know how realistic their overall relationship would have been, like in the real world, especially when Sam spends literally like 3/4 of the book lying to Jonathan about his amnesia, and then Jonathan deciding to keep him in his home instead of trying to find like family or something for him to live with while he's recovering from a head injury that he caused. Yeah, not the great basis for a relationship. This one was much more of a 3.5 stars for me. It was definitely fun. I definitely enjoyed my time with it, but it did take me a little bit to get through because I just don't think faking amnesia is for me. And maybe that's with my disability. Anytime something pops up with anything regarding medical stuff, I always I backpedal a little and need to like take a minute and be like, okay, why is this here? And so it takes me a little bit to get into books that have things like that. I don't think I'll read another faking amnesia book again, unless the characters are really compelling or something. Next is a reread for me. It was Imogen, obviously. I read this book for the first time at the beginning of this year. So this book was actually in my original book haul, but I wanted to bring it up again because I adore this book and it's just so cute. I love it. It's one of those books that are structured with really short chapters, so it's really easy to like speed right through, or at least it feels that way because you're seeing the chapter number go up and up and up. But I absolutely love this book, and I'm putting this in also mainly to remind myself that I started annotating books this year, and I really want to annotate this book because I absolutely love it, which means I have to read it again. Oh no. But what I did see in my reread of this is that in the end of the book, Imogen's friend, what's her name? Yes, I completely forgot her name. Gretchen. Imogen has a best friend named Gretchen, and she is awful. I do not like Gretchen, and that's kind of the point. And she just reminds me of Gretchen, reminds me of people I went to high school with and people who treated me similarly to the way Gretchen treats Imogen in this book. And I think that's a reason I really love this book, is it's a reminder that just because awful people convinced you of one thing doesn't mean that there are good people that are going to love you just the way that you are. So it's a good reminder for me to read every once in a while, so it's sticking around. Next is Daydream by Hannah Grace. This book just came out this year, and I freaking loved it. It was so cute. I love Henry and Haley. They are adorable. I see myself a lot in Haley. I actually was reading this when I went to Rhode Island. So that's a lot of my memories with this book. It was so freaking cute. I absolutely loved it. Also, the fact that Henry was so patient with Haley, with the fact that she had never really had a lot of romantic experiences, and Henry was just like, I'll do it, I don't care. Like, his go with the flow nonchalance is absolutely adorable to me. They are so cute. They work so well together, and I absolutely adored this book. I love Henry. He's a great representation for neurodivergency. He doesn't actually have any sort of diagnosis in the book, and Hannah says in the beginning of the book that that was very intentional, because although she's based it on some of her experience with her personal neurodivergencies, she didn't want to put something on Henry. So to be able to read that along with relating so much to Haley, this was just a very nice read. And yeah. Oh, by the way, I don't think I said, I gave Imogen obviously 5 stars, and I would give Daydream 4.5, if not 5 stars. Next is another audiobook. It was called Top Secret. I wanted to read a college book because I had realized I don't have a lot of books with characters that are my age, especially now that I'm out of college. So I wanted to prioritize that a little bit this back half of the year. So I honestly don't remember much of Top Secret. I know that it was very spicy, and it was about 2 boys, but that's really it. Yeah, it's like a 2-star. I don't really remember it, but yeah, that's a book I read. Ooh, next is The Charm Offensive. So this is a book I have been seeing on TikTok a lot, and again, like I said, I was really into my Finn's barking at something that's happening outside. Is everything okay? You promise? Are you gonna jump up onto bed? You gonna stay down here with me? On the bed. So yes, The Charm Offensive. I loved this book. I had no idea what I was walking into, but a princess royalty themed dating reality show was not it. It was so funny. I absolutely loved it. The main characters were so cute. I'm so bad with names. I don't remember their names, but they were so cute. And there was a third act breakup, which I know a lot of people are not fans of, so put that out there right now. I walked away with it not fully knowing if they would truly be together, like for the long haul, but I definitely think that they were so cute, and the fact that the show turned around and used their romance that did get caught on screen to be the show instead of what was actually happening or what they were actually trying to film, and that it got such well received. I would love to see that in real life, but I don't think we will. But it was very cute. 4-star. Next, another audiobook, An Unexpected Kind of Love. This is a story about a bookshop keeper who stumbles upon who has a film set right outside of his shop, and they actually use his shop in the film, whatever they were filming. I don't remember what it is now, but they were using his shop as like a set. It was very cute. The book shopkeeper ends up falling for one of the stars of the movie, and they definitely have some challenges when it comes to, you know, their relationship and what it means moving forward, with one of them in the public eye and the other one isn't. But they end up together in the end. Again, another third act breakup, but they get back together, and it was one of the ones that was just very cute to read, to see the bookkeeper who hasn't been in a relationship for I think a year was the timeline, to jump back into it was just so cute to read. I absolutely loved it. Another 4-star. Another audiobook, because I read so many at this point, was Lose You to Find Me. So this is the book that I was talking about earlier, where the characters you read about at first, you think they're gonna get together in the end, but they don't. So the two main characters, the one that we actually follow throughout the book, he has been living in his town in Pennsylvania, and he works in the local restaurant. And I think Luke, that sounds right, Luke, a boy he used to go to camp with who moved away and he hasn't seen for years, all of a sudden shows up. And this boy actually was the boy that made him realize that he likes guys. And so he thinks that they're gonna have this whirlwind romance and they're gonna come back together, especially after he learns that Luke actually is gay. But that doesn't actually end up happening. They try, they flirt, they do the things, but it never seems to feel right to either of them. But there's another boy throughout the entire book who the main character has been like casually seeing, but it never really became anything because he was really nervous to come out, because they live in a slightly more conservative area. But he keeps popping up and keep trying to talk to the main character about how he feels and what's going on with him, and you kind of get the idea of, hey, I think this guy's actually working up the courage to do this. And at the end they have the dramatic prom moment where the two of them go out onto the dance floor in front of everybody and they dance together, and it's really cute. And it's another one where it's like, I never really liked Luke, and I didn't think they were gonna work together anyway. And so to see that I was actually right the whole time and they weren't gonna end up together was actually very validating. So 4.5 stars, because I was right. Next is a book that I can't for the life of me find, but it's a physical book that I have. It's called Disability Visibility. Now, this is a nonfiction book. I realize I only really read romance books, so next year I already have a plan to try and expand my roster of book types. That's the goal for next year. But this year I did read one nonfiction book, and it was Disability Visibility. Now, warning right up front, this is a very heavy book. I actually didn't fully finish this book. There were quite a few passages I had to kind of skip over. So the way this book is structured is every chapter of the book is actually a different story from a disabled person's point of view. And as somebody with a disability, a lot of the passages were very validating and comforting to read, but a lot of them were very scary and heavy because there's a lot of talk about suicidal isolation and even people just thinking that, you know, we should die. So it's just a very heavy book. So it took me quite a while, which is actually why there's so many audiobooks in a row on this list, is because I would read a couple of sections and then I'd have to stop. And so I'd read one of my cute little romance books to kind of but yeah, definitely something I think is good if you want to know more about the disability community from disabled people's point of view. 4-star. But obviously, if you're gonna read that book, fair warning, it's a lot. Another audiobook. They Hate Each Other. I think this is another one of a TikTok recommendation that I saw. This one was really fun. It was an enemies to lovers that felt realistic. It was enemies to lovers and fake dating. I love fake dating. I think it's so funny. But I really enjoyed... I am a sucker for dual point of view, which was this book. Like, to be able to actually hear what both characters are thinking, I love. I am so bad with names, but one of the characters, he is the youngest sibling. He's now in his house alone because his siblings are older. They're off doing their own thing. And then the other main character, he is the eldest sibling with 2 younger sisters whose mom passed away, and his dad is basically drunk the whole time. And so he has kind of taken on the role as parent for his 2 sisters, despite the fact that he's a teenager. And his aunt actually moved to their town right after his mom passed to try and help, but he kind of keeps pushing everybody away. And that's like a big part of his character throughout this story, is he just pushes people until finally it's too much because he's a teenager. This isn't supposed to be his life. He's supposed to be a teenager. And so he ends up finally agreeing to help. And that is mainly from the other main character who he's fake dating with, because he starts seeing more of his life and realizing, like, he can't be doing this alone. It's not okay for him to be doing this alone, and I'm not okay with it. And their friends are the ones who are like, you two need to just get together already. And so they did it to kind of just be like, let's just do it, get it over with, and then they can shut up about it. The more he sees, the more he starts to really worry about what's actually going on. And one of their friends actually reveals that a big reason they wanted them to get together at all is so that he could have somebody to actually help him, because their friends, they're there, they're willing to help, they're more than happy to do anything they ask, but they understand that they have already been put at an arm's distance, and having a partner maybe will change that. Once the youngest sibling main character, because I can't think of names right now and it's on my phone and I record on my phone because I didn't think this through, when he finds out that the teacher at the school is actually his aunt, he ends up deciding to talk to her, and like, regardless of whether he ends up hating me and never speaking to me again, he needs help, and I want to give him that help. And sure enough, he gets pissed and he's like, you never speak to me again. But his aunt comes and he helps, and she ends up in the end adopting all of them. It's like the first time since his mom passed that he can just be a teenager. And there's definitely some growing pains with that. Like, they all go shopping and he's like, you can't spend all this money on us. What are you doing? And he gets so pissed. And there's like, hey, we have the money for this. We can do this. Let's just breathe. Let's just get some new clothes for the girls. Get them some new winter coats. You know, if you need anything, let us know. We'll get it. Like, trying to... Because the girls, they're young enough that they can kind of bounce back pretty easily. But he's like 17. So, like, he is like very aware of everything that's going on, and eventually it becomes more and more normal, and he starts to switch from, okay, well, this is a nice temporary thing, but I gotta figure something out long term, to realizing this is long term. This is what's happening. So yeah, once he figures out that this is actually long term and that he's safe with his aunt, and his sisters are safe, he starts actually just being a teenager again, which is really cute to see. And if you can't tell by how much I've blabbed about this book, it's a 5-star book. I really enjoyed this book. Definitely a high recommendation from me. Next, another audiobook, My Fair Brady. Another TikTok recommendation. I thought I was gonna love this book. It's musical theater. It's queer. I thought I was gonna really love this book. I hated it. I have not had, up to this point, a audiobook that I struggled to get through, but I struggled to get through this one. I did not enjoy it. I did not like the characters. Well, Isaiah, I think that's what his name is. I liked him. I didn't like the other guy. The one, did not like him. He was very arrogant, very selfish. It just rubbed me the wrong way. I did not enjoy that book. I was not a fan of the fact that they got together in the end. I didn't think that they deserved each other. I would give it like a 2. I really have nothing to say about it. I just didn't like it. But now we are back to the physical books. And another reread. And if you can see, there are tabs, because this is the first book I have ever annotated. If you can see my little highlights. This is What Happens After Midnight's by K.L. Wolfler. Like I said, it's a reread, so I'm not going to get too far into the details of the story itself. But it's basically some high school students that are pulling off a big prank, and they are working together as a team. And whilst they go through this, it ends up being like a highlight reel of their entire 4 years at this school. It's a private sleepaway school kind of vibe in Rhode Island, and it's just really cute. I really loved reading this the first time because the main character's boyfriend, he actually has diabetes, and it was like the first book I read that had any character with a disability that had a positive representation. So this book just hit very close to home. I ran out of tabs pretty early on. I also realized the highlighter I was using, hold on, let me grab one of the, where are they? They're over here. These ones, the mid-liner dual-ended ones. I used a purple one, but I don't have that purple one because I used the whole highlighter for the one book. Like, I did not realize you guys were using a single highlighter on a book. Like, what? That was crazy. But I definitely learned a lot. Annotating was very weird for me. Like, the idea of writing in a book weirded me the hell out. And I think that's mainly because in high school and even middle school, writing in your book was very frowned upon. I was always the kind of student that would doodle in the margins of my book. And I definitely had teachers that would like tell me no, like you shouldn't be doing that. So I think that's more what's ingrained in my brain. Like them being like, you need to stop writing in your book and pay attention. So actually writing in my book was a little weird. But I definitely enjoyed being able to reread it, especially because I had to read it at a much slower pace because I wanted to make sure that I actually wrote down what I was thinking when I was doing this. So I usually read about 40 pages an hour, but when I annotated, I read more like 20. So it took me twice as long to get through the book, but because it was a reread, it was actually really nice to slow down and actually enjoy the book, because I don't really want to annotate a book that I don't like. So for me, any annotating I do is a reread. So being able to enjoy a book that I already know that I love has been really nice. So my first annotating experience was very positive. So that's more what that one's about, is my annotating. And then we have another audiobook, Icebreaker. Now I, at this point, had read 2 of Hannah's books. Icebreaker was the last one in the series that I hadn't read, and I had been told that it's much more spice than plot. So I was kind of iffy on it, but I was like, you know what? I'm a completionist. I want to at least say that I read it, and I did. And people were definitely right. It's much more spice than there is plot, but it was cute. It was fun. It's way longer than I expected, but I definitely enjoyed it. It's interesting having read her last 2 books before this one, because I could see the progression in her story writing, which was actually really cool. So Icebreaker, definitely not as high up as Wildfire or Daydream. I think it's more like a 3 on for me, but it was definitely very cute and very spicy. So speaking of Hannah Grace, we have Wildfire, and this is another annotation. You probably can't see it as well because I ended up doing this one in pen, because like I said, I went through an entire highlighter with just one book, so I wanted to see what a pen was like, and I actually really enjoyed just doing it with a pen and just underlining things. I definitely think that's how I'm gonna do it moving forward, and maybe with tabs, but again, I didn't have tabs, so yeah. I definitely enjoyed my reread of this book. I don't love it as much as Daydream, so this one's more like a 4, if Daydream's more like a 5. But it's still very cute. I liked that it was clear, again, having just read Icebreaker, how much Hannah's writing had changed with this book. I think putting in the caveat that the 2 main characters were at a summer camp where fraternizing was against the rules, and so they kind of had to work around it, I think helped with that. So I'm very glad to see that progression in her writing was really cool. And now we get to December, the end of the year. So I just finished my audiobook, How My Neighbor Stole Christmas. A very popular book this season, and honestly, it's kind of mid for me. I loved the competition in it. I thought that was really fun. I'm actually really sad. I did not like the way they ended it with not actually showing the end of the competition. I really wish they actually sat down and did that, but they didn't. So what can you do? And the main character's story, I think it would have ended better if they just ended up as friends. I didn't really get a lot of romantic energy from either of them, but it was okay. And it is kind of sad because I love The Grinch, the movies. which is what this story was kind of supposed to be replicating, was The Grinch, and it was just kind of It's like a 2.5 star. Like, it was fine, but I wouldn't reread it. So, last on my list is Set on You by Amy Lee. Now, I very much enjoyed this book. This was like a random book that I found in Walmart, and I read the back of it. It's like, oh, I like that. And I definitely really like this book. It's about a curvy fitness influencer, Crystal, and this firefighter. What's his name? Scott. I just read this book and I forgot all the characters' names. And their little love story, which I think is very cute. It works very well. But what I actually really loved in this book was Crystal's point of view on the body positive movement, because I said this in my review on Fable, as somebody who was in that world for a while, especially before I got my celiac diagnosis and I was much heavier than I am now, I used to follow all of those things, and it made me feel like crap about myself even more, because I don't know, it's not as uplifting as a lot of people expected it to be. So to see Crystal actually end up going against that and pointing out the flaws of it, and how, and also the author showing how like damaging it actually is, was actually really nice to see, because loving yourself 24/7 is not realistic for anybody. So I think I ended up giving this one a 4-star. So I had a lot of great reads this year. How many books is that? 1, 2, 3, 18. 18 books in the last 6 months. So a majority of my reading happened this month, which audiobooks definitely had something to do with it. So yes. So that is my reading wrap up for 2024. I did want to end this with my book bingo for next year. So this year I did a book bingo about halfway through the year. You can see I did pretty well. The only ones I didn't mark off were 1 star and a fantasy book. But this year I was a little bit more intentional for 2025 about what I wanted, because I wanted to, 1, expand my book genres, and 2, actually try and challenge myself this year, because the last 2 years I've done just build a reading habit, which I definitely have now. But for 2025, I actually want to challenge myself with the reading that I'm actually doing, and not just reading in general. So that is the goal of this. So we have read a nonfiction book, start a series, because I really enjoyed making sure I completed my Land of Story series, and getting through all of the Heartstopper Alice Oseman books. So I wanted to start a new series in 2025 because I missed that this year because I didn't have one. A book with LGBTQ plus main character. That is a lot of the books that I read, so I put down an easy one. I want a book with a disabled main character, which I do not have, like, anywhere, I don't think. Maybe Daydream would count, but a book that is over 400 pages, which I actually already have in my TBR stack, so that one will be written off pretty fast. I want to annotate some more books this year. A book talk rec, which is going to be interesting, because if TikTok goes away, I'm not going to get book recommendations from Book Talk because it won't exist anymore. Or it won't exist for me anymore. So, we'll see about that one. If I don't end up getting it before the TikTok ban comes, then I will change this to just a online recommendation. I want to read a book by a new author, and by that I mean a new author to me. So somebody I hadn't read from before, which is a lot of the authors in my TBR stack, so that'll be a pretty easy one. I want to read a poetry book. I have 2 poetry books, and I just want to get into more of them, so add that to the list. I want to read another graphic novel. The only ones I have are the Heartstopper ones, and I really love them, so get a new one of those. I want to read a book in a day. I've done that with audiobooks, so I don't think that'll be too difficult, but a nice little challenge to throw in there. A book that is / will be a TV / film adaptation. So a story that either has a film adaptation already or one that has recently been announced. I'm like, oh, I'd really like to see that movie. Let's read the book first. Kind of vibe. Then I have my free space. A book set in New England. I have a few of those, so I just want a few more. So add that to the list. A book that is releasing in 2025. I have a few on my list, including Sunrise on the Reaping, which will most likely be that square. I want to read a fantasy book. Like I said, that's like one of the only squares that I didn't end up filling out in my book bingo for this year, so I added it to this one to try and get one of those in. I want to read a classic book. So I've read like Frankenstein and books like that. So a classic literature book. Next is a comic book because I've seen a lot of them online and I would just really like to read one. I'm a big Marvel fan, so I wanted to get into those. So that's on the list. A retelling story. So something like Wicked actually, or it's a retelling of The Wizard of Oz. So something in that sort of genre. A short book, so a book under 200 pages. A book with a one-word title. A sci-fi book, because I don't have any on my like bookshelf at all, so I'd like to read one of those, see if I like that genre. A book that has a character with my name in it. A book that has a number in the title, and then a debut author. So that is my goals for next year and the books I read this year. I hope you enjoyed. I'm thinking next year I'm actually going to do these videos quarterly. So one every 3 months instead of 6 months. So that this can be a little bit more frequent. Especially because I'm sure you saw, I forgot half the plots of the books that I read. So hopefully if I do it every 3 months instead of every 6 months, I'll actually remember more of what I read. But if you would like to see more in the moment, like straight after I finish a book recs, definitely follow me on Fable, because that's where I'll be going in 2025 for my book tracking. With that, that is the end of this Vlogmas video. I hope you enjoyed. I know it was a bit of a sit-down rambly video, but I love those kind of videos, so that's what you get from me. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Comment down below what was your favorite book that you read this year. I would love to know. On screen now are my social media handles if you'd like to see more day-to-day things that I get up to. And with that, I will see you in 2 days for the next Vlogmas episode.